I love to ask this question of my confirmation classes. I ask them every year, where is Jesus right now? Think about that. Well, how would you answer? Where is Jesus right this minute? I always get answers like, he's in my heart, or he's everywhere. Occasionally, I'll get one who will know the creed and will say, he's at the right hand of God in heaven. It's honestly a pretty tricky question. It's not an easy one for us to answer, especially since we've based our entire children's ministry on asking children to ask Jesus into their hearts, right? And then we've taught our youth of God's omnipresence, the fact that he is everywhere and that Jesus is God. So, of course, doing a little math, Jesus must be everywhere as well. But 1 John 2:1 makes it pretty clear to us what Jesus is up to these days. It says this, but if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. That word advocate is a pretty evocative word. Advocate. Jesus, as we state in the Apostles' Creed, indeed does sit at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. But what's he doing there? Well, he's advocating for us with God. In fact, within the Trinity, there are two advocates, really. The Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. John's Gospel calls the Holy Spirit the advocate, in fact, the counselor, the paraclete. John's Gospel calls him this. So why so many advocates within the Trinity? I think the simple answer is because we need them desperately. The poor, the weak. At my first church, we used to use this language: the lost, the last, the least, and the littlest. These people desperately need advocates, and compared to God, we are exactly that. We are the lost, and the last, and the least, and the littlest. We have no power to stand before God and advocate for ourselves, to convince God to treat us differently. And so God himself has supplied for us the greatest advocates that there are, himself in two other persons, Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. So let's take that fact and translate that into our world. Who are those in our world that you would call the lost, the last, the least, and the littlest? Who are those who don't have the power to advocate for themselves? Because ultimately, this is a question of power. This is all questions of power. Who has the power to make change in this world, and who does not? This is a pretty easy question in a lot of cultures around the world. A lot of cultures have simply ranked themselves based on this very question and named them the powerful and the least. Maybe we call them castes. Maybe we call them the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Whatever we may call them, a lot of societies at least own up to the fact that they are divided by power. In America, this is often tied intimately with wealth, because, of course, as we say, money is power. But it can also be based on race. It can be based on class, or on gender, or on age, or on religion, or even on circumstance. Whether it's the homeless, or women, or those who are not white. I'd list all the other colors, but frankly, what we're talking about is those who are not white. Or it could be the elderly, or it could be the very young, or it could be those with special needs. Everywhere we look, there are those around us who are the lost, the last, the least, and the littlest. And just as we need an advocate to speak for us in front of God, these people need us to speak for them. We've been talking about Richard Foster's suggestions on what it means to become part of the social justice tradition of the church. And his third suggestion is to become an advocate for these people. This can mean all kinds of different things. It can mean writing letters on behalf of those without power to those who have power, who can make a difference for them. This can be senators or House representatives or mayors. It can mean agreeing to stand up for them within your own personal social circles, advocating not only for their better treatment, but also simply for their pride. When you are at a dinner party and you hear someone say that the poor are poor because they're lazy, or you hear them talk about the homeless and hear what an eyesore they are, or a burden on society, being an advocate means to stand for them. It means you imagine that that person just said that about your child, and then you respond accordingly and appropriately. It can mean giving money and time to organizations that can help, because both your money and your time are needed. It can mean speaking up for them out of the blue at dinner parties or in social functions, sharing the things that you've learned about them. And if you don't feel you know enough, then maybe you go back to yesterday's blog and see what it means to get the facts and learn about homelessness and about poverty and about racism in our country. It can mean using your own creativity, because every one of us is a lot more creative than I am alone, to share their plight and to make a difference for them. As I said yesterday, this isn't a pastime. This isn't a hobby. This isn't something that we do when we have a little extra time on our hands. This is the call of God to we who are in power in our culture and are Christians. If you have power in this culture, and I guarantee you all of you do, and if you are Christians, and I certainly hope that you are, then you have a responsibility to advocate for the poor. Just as Jesus and the Holy Spirit advocate before you personally, before the Father, who has the power to change things for the better, so we need to be advocates for those with less power than us in our world. Light a candle rather than shouting at the darkness. Do some small thing to stand for the lost, the last, the least, and the littlest, rather than simply shouting about how unfair life is. It's not easy. I mean, it's not hard to be an advocate. It's really quite easy. All you got to do is light a candle. All right, we'll talk to you about our next step tomorrow. So, God bless.